welcome to the T-Shirt Teacher. Kristen Frugier here, published author, editor, and former high school English teacher. On today's episode of Pick Your Poison, this is episode 5, we are going to talk about the madness of Hamlet and Coriolanus' calculated charisma. And we'll pick back up sort of where we left off, and Hamlet enters the room in Act 2, Scene 2, and he and Polonius have a less than polite exchange. He calls Polonius a fishmonger and speaks in riddles to him. In that time period, a fishmonger was one of the less than savory characters of society. So he has insulted Polonius, basically. In Act 2, Scene 2, Polonius says to Hamlet's insults to himself, he says kind of to the side. Whenever it says aside in Shakespeare, that means that they're talking to themselves, and it's kind of giving the audience an insight into what the character's thinking. He says, "Though this be madness, yet there is method in it. Will you walk out of the air, my lord?" And that is where the phrase, the method to your madness, comes from. If you've ever wondered, that's where it originated. Polonius doesn't quite think that Hamlet's behavior fits a truly mentally ill person, but it fluctuates so quickly, it's so hard to tell, which is precisely what Hamlet wants him to think. He is baiting with questions, trying to see how loyal he is to the new king, and sort of trying to see where things stand. He's seeing how far he can manipulate Polonius, basically. Now, Snow's madness, through the later books, especially, is much like Hamlet's, and it's very calculated. They both know how to play this game really well. Hamlet's friends and members of the Danish court are then called for by his mother and uncle. They arrive to cheer up Hamlet. And he, in fact, is glad to see them at first. But in Act 2, Scene 2, upon the arrival of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Hamlet compares Denmark to a prison, even one of the worst. Hamlet, Act 2, Scene 2, 246 through 247 is where that comes from. Rosencrantz goes on to say that he doesn't think it is, and Hamlet basically tells him that his situation makes it so, and it is because he said it is, and it wouldn't be something that they would understand. And his friend tells him that he's just too ambitious, and that's why he feels that way. Hamlet, line 271, and before asks them the reason of their visit, and they say it's just a friendly visit, nothing more. Hamlet then says he knows that they're up to something. Then in Act 2, Scene 2, lines 293, Guildenstern admits, "My lord, we were sent for." So yes, they admit, yeah, we were sent for, but we want you to feel better, basically. And then Hamlet tells them of his troubles and that nothing makes him happy anymore, and he's so depressed. And they tell him, "Oh, we brought actors. They're going to perform a play and make you feel better." Hamlet just seems to lighten up a little bit after this, but as everyone's leaving, he pulls aside an actor and he asks him to insert some dialogue and lines into this play. And Hamlet is playing his own game at this. And we'll see in Act 2, Scene 2, lines 534 through 546, what exactly Hamlet is up to. In Act 2, Scene 2, lines 548 through 606, Hamlet monologues a lengthy speech regarding revenge and depression, ending with a promise to catch the conscience of the king. He says, "More relatives than this. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king." And if you've ever heard, "The play's the thing," that's another Shakespeare reference. You may not have. I may just be an English nerd. I don't know. And Hamlet's also a little offended that a play is supposed to make him feel better. So he's just going to turn it on its head and he's going to make it work for him. The Queen in the next few passages says she hopes Hamlet's madness is just because of Ophelia. Of course she would wish that. Of course. Then in Act 3, Scene 1, we see Hamlet go on his famous soliloquy rant where he is talking about the purpose of life, questioning it, things like that. And of course I'm going to read the whole thing. If you want to skip it, that's fine, but I am going to read this. I memorized this whole thing in high school and I enjoyed it and I freaked my classmates out. But I'm very sorry that I freaked you out. I'm clearly fine. I'm a published author. Don't know if that makes me sane or not, but anyway, I digress. Hamlet says, "To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing in them, to die, to sleep. No more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache, and thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of deprised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? That is a sword. A bare bodkin is a sword, just in case anybody wants to know. Who would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied over with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with great regard, their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action. Soft now, the fair Ophelia. He sees Ophelia, so he's like, oh, hey, Ophelia. After he has gone on this long rant about life and death and how he is afraid to kill himself because he does not know what comes after. He is afraid that death may bring him to an afterlife that is even more terrifying and terrible than the life he is living now. And there is a Robin Williams movie called What Dreams May Come that explores that concept. I don't necessarily theologically agree with the movie's concept, but it is a very good movie, and Robin Williams was an amazing actor. But anyway, as for Hamlet's to be or not to be speech, we see a similar sentiment expressed in a question by Clemencia in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. She's a classmate of Snow's. And she asks if there's a point to the color of the snakes that Dr. Gall, one of the head game makers, has made. And Dr. Gall answers, there's a point to everything or nothing at all, depending on your worldview. The entire to be or not to be question hinges heavily on worldview, and if you believe in a point to everything or nothing. Both scenes foreshadow death in one way or another. As a snake bit Clemencia due to her deception, Hamlet's father's ghost reveals that while the story is a snake bit him, it was a person, a snake of a person, his own brother, who killed him. And then he talks to Ophelia, and he is very rude to her. He tells her that he loved her once, but he never really loved her, and she shouldn't have believed him when he told her. He continually tells her, "Get thee to a nunnery." He says to Ophelia, "Get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I myself indifferent honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things, that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offences at my beck than I have thoughts to put in them, imagination to give them shape, or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do, crawling between earth and heaven? We are arrant knaves, believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where's thy father?" So he is saying, Ophelia, all guys are bad, everybody's a villain, basically just give up on life. I've given up on life, and why would you want to bring more corruption into the world, you horrible person? Go to a nunnery, you're ruined. And very, 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 very rude to Ophelia. We see Hamlet's view not only of Ophelia, but of himself and all men as one similar to that of Coriolanus Snow's view of men. They lament that no one can actually be good, and while Coriolanus Snow does not label it as sin per se, it's the same concept we're working with, and that basic human nature we see brought out in the Hunger Games, that Hamlet and Coriolanus Snow both believe that at the core, humans are going to be bad when given the choice. They're going to be corrupt when given the choice, which I have an opinion about all that, but not for here, it's for another time. So I both agree and disagree, I'll say that. And that's a fun little conversation stem for your English class. I both agree and disagree, and then tell them why. Also, both characters seem to know they're selfish and revengeful, but they don't plan to do anything about it. They both use and abuse the affection of women who've shown interest in them, and they forget any feelings or fondness they may have as soon as they come closer to achieving their goals. And then we're jumping back into Hamlet, picking up where we left off. Polonius and the king, they make a plan to eavesdrop on Hamlet as he talks with his mother. They want the queen to call him to her room, and so they can eavesdrop and see if they can get real answers. But they were like, it can wait till after the play. The king is still pretty nervous about Hamlet's intentions. And if he's still acting wildly, they decide, we're going to send Hamlet to England. That is their solution. And Claudius doesn't think that it's the ramblings of a madman. He doesn't think it's a man in love that is Hamlet's ramblings that he has heard so far. He's not convinced. He says in Act 3, Scene 2, line 192, "Madness in great ones must not go unwatched." In Ballad, we also see Snow is paranoid about the dean of his school, Higginbottom. He's convinced that there's a reason he was given what originally he assumed was a tribute that had no chance of winning. So the paranoia in both stories comes out. We see this interaction between Coriolanus and Higginbottom on page 35 and on to page 36, where Coriolanus wonders why he's being singled out for a nickname and if it's something more. He doesn't realize how much deeper it goes till the end of the book. It's much more than a silly nickname that caused that turn of events, but we'll get to that. He says, could there be some other reason he hated Coriolanus so much? Whatever it was, Coriolanus needed to set it right. He could not risk losing his prize over such a thing. We see then that Coriolanus and his thoughts about what will happen if he doesn't get a university prize and his derision for the districts and the people again as seen on page 36 when he says they'd ship him off to some backwater district where the people were hardly better than animals. And he says, everyone knew what happened and you went to the districts. You were often written off, forgotten. In the eyes of the capital, you are basically dead. And then we see on page 37, he's waiting for the train with the other tributes, which is not traditionally done, but he's determined to win. He would get a prize. He would have to. And have a brilliant university career. We see Hamlet manipulating Polonius, Ophelia, his mother, his friends, pretending to be crazy to gain information, it seems. Even Polonius noticed it wasn't a typical madman answer, because some of the answers Hamlet gave were very intelligent. And he's still, though, convinced that Hamlet is just hopelessly romantic and has gone mad from love. Now we see Coriolanus understanding he needs to manipulate Higginbottom, but he is frustrated because he cannot figure out how. Because one must know why the person hates you before you can truly manipulate them. Snow can't land on top if he doesn't know where to bring the snowstorm, and the fact that he's powerless to figure it out bothers him greatly. He understands what he needs to do to make the capital citizens love his tribute, and he's going to do it. He just can't figure out Higginbottom, and that's quite troubling to him. If you've ever heard the phrase, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, that's kind of what's going on here. And that could apply in both situations. King Claudius wants to keep Hamlet close, so he knows he's not a threat, and if he is, he's sending him on to England. Coriolanus can't figure out why Higginbottom has such a close eye on his performance, but we'll see it play out towards the end of the book. Just hang on for that wild ride. We'll see you next time on the T-Shirt Teacher. Today's T-shirt is the Community Christian School Lions. I taught at that school a few years ago, and I very much enjoyed teaching that group of children. I've enjoyed all my kids that I've taught, though. Most of these kids are adults now. The T-Shirt Teacher, making formal learning more comfortable.